In this play, he showed the capacity to FC the map. He would need to put in a few more attempts. Yeah, that was basically where he quit the map. Up to this point, Idkey, Vaxay, and maybe Matthew seemed to be the only ones with the level of technical skill needed to achieve an FC. But that list would, in a moment, grow by one, in September of 2019, when Whitecat was unbanned. Immediately after his unban, a lot of people believed that the stream parts of the map would ruin his chances, but he would quickly get much, much better. This was also combined with Whitecat's attachment to the map. This is because Sound Chimera was actually one of the maps that he played a ton before his unban, and it was clearly pretty good practice, because you can see how big of a difference there is between his runs then and the runs he would eventually end up getting. Which would all start with a 4 miss that he'd get just 2 months after his unban, and he wouldn't stop there, because he would continue to put in attempts while improving his flow aim. And by just a month later, he was able to achieve an extremely impressive score. A Sound Chimera 1 miss, the play that made Whitecat the forerunner on the map. An FC seemed totally doable, especially since he'd FC'd all the stream sections and only missed the jumps. And luckily, unlike Idkey, he would continue to play the map. And just a week later, he would set another 1 miss on the map, where he would almost FC the jump section, missing in the exact same spot as Idkey. During this time, Vaxay would also get a score just as, or maybe even more impressive than those 1 misses, with his Hard Rock 6 miss score. It was worth over 1,000 PP if he got an FC, and honestly, Vaxay pretty much had the perfect skill set for the map. But he never really put in the time or attempts that Whitecat or Idkey did, so he never really followed through on it. The thing is that the middle of 2020 would end up being a pretty pivotal moment for Osu, with a huge increase in player skill. And it would show pretty clearly on the map's leaderboard. Reedcat, A21, and Marek would all end up 1 missing the map. Marek would also be the first person to hit the entire jump and stream part. Sadly, he would choke pretty hard on the last leg of the map. During this time, Whitecat was pretty inactive, and so it seemed that while he might have paved the way with his 1 miss, he wouldn't end up being the one to follow through with it, just like Idkey 2 years prior. But ultimately, that would not be the case, because after all of this, Whitecat would come and become the first person to defeat Sound Chimera. Whitecat's FC on the map is still the penultimate score, and in a way, it sort of completed his transformation as a player, because it marks his transformation from the Whitecat who in late 2019 was often pegged the DT1 trick, to the one who came to set one of the coolest no-mod plays in the game, a play that made complete mastery of jump and flow aim. The best part is that this wasn't where he stopped, because just a few months later, he would come back and set a monster of a score with Hard Rock. Yeah, he would 4 miss the map with a mod, making it clear that even 2 years after his unban, he's still the king of Sound Chimera. Sound Chimera's insane popularity has made it stand out, since when every good player puts in attempts on a map, it means the plays that rise to the top are some of the most impressive technical showcases in the game. Kaki's insane hidden Hard Rock score, Idkey's grind, and Whitecat's proving he can stream marked just a few times the map completely encompassed the landscape of the game. And in a time where players have gotten so good that Hard Rock may even be doable on the map, it's going to be extremely interesting to see where it goes in the future. And I think that's pretty cool.
Hey, how's it going, everybody? Kage here, and today, once again, brought my pal Six with me. You can introduce yourself again if you want.
Hello. We're gonna go over Minato versus Shisui.
So, people match them up all the time, right? And I get comments like every day, so who would win, Minato versus Shisui? People tweet it at me all the time, and I see other people getting asked this all the time. It's just like a really popular matchup. Let's start with like all the positive stuff for him. Now, before we go any further, I'd just like to take a quick break on behalf of today's sponsor, Raid Shadow Legends. Most of you have probably at least already heard the name by now, since it's been around for, at the time of this video's release, 3.5 years and is still going strong. For those of you who don't already know, Raid's a turn-based RPG that takes place in a dark fantasy setting and is available for download on PC and mobile platforms. It's completely free to play, and at least in my opinion, is one of the best-looking mobile games on the market right now. I first started playing it last October and have been actively engaged with it ever since. Probably because it's really easy to pick up and play whenever I need something to do, and I also just generally tend to like fantasy aesthetics and turn-based combat. Believe me when I say that there is like always stuff to do in the game. There are like a billion different characters to unlock and level up, and it's constantly being updated with new content and features. As a matter of fact, a recent boss that just got added to the game is one of the craziest I've ever played against, like not just in Raid, but in any game period. It's this boost and an ancient shard so you can summon an awesome champion as soon as you get in game. All this treasure will be waiting for you here in your gift box, but these rewards will only be available for the next 30 days and only to new players. So to any potential newcomers, I wish you the best of luck, and thanks again to Raid Shadow Legends for sponsoring this video. Now we can't use the manga because
he doesn't do anything.
He is totally featless in the manga. He basically doesn't exist. He's like a lore entity, if anything, right? Like people talk about him and the things that he did, but it's all very vague.
Yeah, Shisui's maximum participation in the manga is literally just giving his eye to Itachi. Other than that, like from at least the original manga itself, we get like he ran into Al some time ago during like the third war and they fought, like he fought his platoon, he like scared Al a bit. And I think that's why people ask about Shisui a lot, is because they're looking for information.
And well, the other thing too is there are a lot of different versions of what happened to him. Like they're not all congruent with each other, right? The anime, Storm Revolution, and the novel all tell a different version of the same story. Most of it is pretty similar, but the fight with Danzo is always like wildly different. Like if we use anime filler for this matchup, then like Minato is way stronger and Shisui is way weaker, so this is just like a horrible stomp.
Because in the anime, the confrontation with Danzo just goes like Shisui genjutsu's Danzo because he's like doing some fishy shit, and then Danzo uses Izanagi to get out of the genjutsu, and he like knees Shisui in the chin, and Shisui like flies up in the air and he just rips his eye out. It gets a bit better in the game. Yeah, so they like fight each other in the game like back and forth for a while, and they're like kind of tired at the end. And you can maybe even apply like in the game Shisui's holding back on Danzo because he doesn't bring out the MS or the Susanoo during the fight, but he still fights him to like fatigue, at least in his Rutomo state. So it doesn't really matter. Just like in all of the renditions, the fight with Danzo is the end for him.
Like I was saying, the best version of the fight for him is the novel, because Shisui doesn't actually fight Danzo head on there. He gets poisoned, and is poisoned from one of the members of the Aburame clan, and one of the secondary effects of this poison is paralysis, so he's totally unable to move. That's good for him, because that tells us he's not as weak as like pre-Sharingan Danzo, which would just be horrible for him. In that case, Shisui would get obliterated by Minato.
Yeah, not only would he get obliterated by Minato, he'd get obliterated by people like Sekitachi, MS Sasuke. He'd get obliterated by later Danzo for sure.
Oh yeah, easily. I don't think that this interpretation is necessarily inconsistent and use it to construct a sort of a picture of what Shisui might have looked like at full power. I think the most impressive thing is there's this plan that the Uchiha clan makes where they want to go kidnap Hiruzen, and the person that they want to have like break into the Hokage manor, which makes this even more impressive because I imagine that it would be guarded by a bunch of other ninja, and just go into Hiruzen's office and kidnap him and take him hostage. The book specifically mentions they planned on using Shisui's body flicker to do this, which means that the Uchiha clan at least thinks he's fast enough to capture the third Hokage.
Even when Danzo gets to Sharingan, you can sort of imply he doesn't think he's at Hiruzen's level, so definitely like pre-Sharingan Danzo should not be at Hiruzen's level, so Shisui shouldn't be losing to someone of that tier.
If you want to go this route, you have to assume then that Shisui's above Danzo, which again, like we said, for the purposes of this video is fine. Danzo actually says this himself, that Itachi and Shisui are just like the best, strongest members of the Uchiha clan.
So the context behind it as well is that they're saying that if they win Shisui and Itachi over like in this supposedly upcoming war with the Uchiha clan, that they'll just win the war because they'll have the two strongest Uchiha on their side.
It's up to you whether or not you agree with the implication that Fugaku was maybe fit to be Hokage, definitely at least Kage level. Knowing that, it's fair to reason then that maybe it actually does make sense if Shisui is stronger than him, that he would be fast enough to do what they were going to need him to do for this plan, where they were going to have him capture Hiruzen.
And we're just talking about like in terms of a combatant, right? Obviously, because like nothing implies, at least from what we mentioned, that Shisui should be able to like punch Hiruzen in his stomach and like knock him out or something like that.
Yeah.
But he's definitely got the speed to be up there, and then he's just like an Uchiha with crazy genjutsu. So like overall, he should just be like around that tier, like upper Sani, something like that.
Itachi, throughout both of the novels, he thinks that Shisui is better than him, looks up to him, wants to be as strong as him. This is also implied in the game pretty much right before Shisui dies. The narrative does seem to imply that Shisui is like around like this level of power. It's fairly nebulous, but I feel like understanding this, if I assume that Shisui is actually this strong based on all these things, I have a pretty good idea of who he could and couldn't beat.
And it's not Minato.
Yeah, exactly.
So the main reason why is, like we just discussed, Shisui's like upper Sani, like around that tier, right? And then we get to Jiraiya. And Jiraiya, when he's talking to Tsunade, this is like during the search for Tsunade arc, is like the first time they find Tsunade. He's telling Tsunade that basically it's like a whole double spread of Jiraiya just jerking off Minato. He's literally like, yeah, Minato's capacity as Shinobi is just unmatched. Everybody pales in comparison to Minato, just jerking him off. So it's like Jiraiya, who in base is like around Orochimaru and Hiruzen's level, he's got Sage mode, and on top of that, he still just pales in comparison to Minato. So right there, that's just blatant like ABC. Minato is way stronger than someone like Shisui.
I mean, there are a whole lot of other ways that you can illustrate this too, right? Like if you want to assume that Jiraiya is just like biased or whatever, he doesn't actually know what he's talking about. Most people, I think, agree that Sage Naruto was stronger than Sage Jiraiya, and Pain was stronger than Sage Naruto was. When Naruto starts talking to Minato in his mind, when Minato seals the Nine Tails back up, Minato looks at Pain and he's like, so this guy's really strong, but this Madara guy is like way stronger than him, and you're gonna have to like master the Nine Tails if you want to beat that guy. And this guy that Minato's talking about isn't somebody that gave him any trouble, by the way, mind you. Minato, like, what he did to Obito was filthy. It was like a one and done, one tap, and then Obito just ran away. He got hit by one Rasengan and then just gave up.
Yeah.
Like the whole reason Obito went to the village was in order to get the Nine Tails and start controlling it. So you'd imagine that he'd be doing everything in his power to make sure that he doesn't lose the Nine Tails. And like the first thing Minato does after touching him is just like freeze the Nine Tails from his control, right? It's like really bad. So even if Shisui is like at or somewhat above Hiruzen in terms of strength, like there are so many more pegs on this totem pole that are all above him that it's like,
yeah, it's literally just saying like Minato has a much higher quality of scaling over Hiruzen than Shisui can ever dream of, right? And like keep in mind, we're being generous to Shisui here, like putting him this high, just like using only novel things, like assuming the novel is like the canon way to interpret everything. So it's not like, you know, it's not like this is like concrete or anything. Minato is just much higher than Shisui, even at his best, is what's trying to be conveyed.
Yeah, because the thing is, you don't have to make any assumptions to put Minato above all of those people. And with Shisui, you have to be like, well, I guess it would make sense because of these other things. But this idea that he's like Hiruzen level is like only